Two Charrington trade acquisitions directly contributed to the sweep of the Tigers. So let's look at their performance and a special crossover segment with Gabby from Locked On Red Sox 2. That's next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. The Pirates swept the Tigers with standout performances from Spencer Horwitz and Bailey Falter. We're going to talk about winning and losing trades today in segment 2. And finally, in segment 3, we're going to have my friend Gabby from Locked On Red Sox on. And we're going to see if we can't come up with some deals that might work for both sides, because that's how trades should be. If you really look at them the right way, you want to try to make deals that help both sides. That tends to make for better moves. In this series, though, Spencer Horwitz went 7 for 12 with 7 RBI, a walk, 4 runs scored. Included in all that was his first career grand slam that really made this a much easier game for Bailey Falter to dominate. And dominate he did. 7 innings of 1-run ball with 8 strikeouts. Impressive. And a heck of a bounce back from where he was in the first game against the White Sox coming out of the All-Star break. Look, I understand where a lot of you are on Horwitz, and I want everyone to just be as honest as they can here when we discuss this. Many of you didn't want to like this deal simply because of who made it to begin with. And then it turned out he was apparently damaged goods. I'm not even going to try to talk you out of it, okay? But here are some facts. In a typical spring training, a guy who's expected to be a starter, that's not recovering from a surgery, mind you, might expect anywhere from 40 to 60 at-bats in a spring. Spencer had all of 47 in Altoona and Indianapolis before being brought right back up to the majors. He's fully recovered, sure, but wrist injuries are notorious for being healed long time before they're strong, if that makes sense. He's now 185 at-bats into his MLB career with the Pirates, and it's not perfect, but it's better than his start makes it look. He's only played 52 games for the Pirates, but in his last 30, he's hitting .278 with an on-base percentage of .342 and a slug of .398. These aren't even his career norms yet. So honestly, I'd just say try as hard as you can to convince yourself someone you believe can make a good trade might have here, you know? I mean, like, you don't think he can, but this might have been one. It's funny that Charrington's other good evidence for pulling off a decent trade is the guy who pitched this one, Bailey Falter, famously acquired for Rodolfo Castro. You know, another good trade, right? Bailey's appeared in 59 games for the Pirates in that time, 291 innings. I mean, that's a lot for a utility baseball player who hasn't really ever gotten back to the league in any meaningful way. You know, so maybe we kind of overreact to what his trades have been. Yeah, he's had some stinkers, and we're going to go into in the second segment. I'm going to talk a lot about how I evaluate trades, how I look at them, how I kind of even go back in the prism of history and reevaluate them. I look at them as living organisms. They're things that change. You know, when I first make a trade, I might be trading for something I need. And I need it right that second. It only helps me right then. And of course, whatever you traded, the other team gets 5-6 years out of it. It's going to look like they won the trade. But did I get what I needed in the moment? Did it bring me what I needed right then? Because that's the goal. And Spencer Horwitz is just a great example of that. You know, people want to be focused on whether you win or lose a trade. And I totally get that. But Spencer Horwitz is a guy that you're just not going to know that answer for a while. then it has very little to do with, Luis Ortiz getting dinged for this gambling thing that's going on as to whether this trade's good or not. In many ways, I was more upset that they traded Michael Kennedy in that deal than I was that they traded Luis Ortiz, because I felt that Luis Ortiz's underlying metrics told me a story about a guy that was probably going to keep struggling with giving up big power numbers. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I know I needed a first baseman. And I know that I like a lot of the profile of Spencer Horwitz. And I think he's starting to come good here. So sometimes I think it just requires a little bit of patience. And I think in many cases with these trades, we're kind of deciding before we've seen anything, just based on the assumption that this guy's dumb and he's going to do something dumb. And I just don't think that's always the case. This was a good series for Brian Reynolds, too. It was nice to see him contribute and get back on the horse a little bit. I'm trying to not get too up about Brian Reynolds in this series, if only because Brian Reynolds has kind of shown us a peek at this before, and it went away almost as fast as it came. So let's see how he progresses and how he does as we move a little bit further into the season. It'd be really, really good for this team if he could turn around. Obviously, he's important whether you're trying to win or just play out the string. But you want to feel much better about Brian Reynolds going into 2026 than I think you would if he continues this season on this track. Because it's not overstating it to say that right now, Brian Reynolds, he's one of the worst outfielders in the league if you just look at numbers, okay? We've had him a long time here in Pittsburgh. I think we all know that that's not the type of player he typically is, but this year, there's no denying what he's put on paper is pretty poopy. All right? Like he's going to have to show a little bit of a resurrection here in the second half, and not so that he doesn't get traded or not so that they don't go out and find somebody better to play instead of him, because come on, you're a Pirates fan. You know that ain't happening. And he's not getting traded. This would be criminally selling low. I don't think you'd get anywhere near the value you would for Brian Reynolds if he was having a typical Brian Reynolds year. Then you certainly have time to play that out if that's something that you want to do. Plus, I think you kind of know you want him to be part of this thing. Same with O'Neal Cruz, too. I'm hearing a lot of rumors about O'Neal Cruz, but they're not going to happen. They're not going to happen. You guys have got to stop getting confused about hearing that the Pirates are listening on something and confusing and conflating that with the Pirates are absolutely trying like hell to do this. It's not what's happening. This team has a policy that they will listen, period, on anything. Anything. Now, they've gone out publicly and said they have no interest in trading Paul Skeens. But I'm telling you, if somebody calls and they say, listen, I know you don't want to trade Paul Skeens, but hear me out, they're going to hear him out. And then if that happens to leak back to the media that they heard somebody out, well, guess what? They've listened on Paul Skeens. Oh, that's what happens. This is nothing. It's a nothing story. Keep using your common sense and don't let the media derail you throughout this process, okay? It's bad enough and hard enough knowing that you have to sell off a bunch of pieces. That doesn't mean that it has to get taken to detonation level, okay? That's not what they're trying to do here. So when we come back, let's talk about trades and how we grade them and how we understand them and how we rate them. And we'll use the history of some of Ben Cherington's trades to do so. Gameday Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. The hat pairs perfectly with my usual gear, as you can see. It doesn't replace my team's logo stuff. It just adds to the lineup a little bit. It's not just hats either. I mean, look, they sent me these awesome gloves. They're really, really great. I already took them out on the course and gave them a test run. and everything worked out. I actually think the palms are thicker than the ones that I'm used to, and I loved it. Actually really improved my game. Shot one of my better games in a while. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now the time to load up. Let your Kellers talk, because Kellers speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com. Code MLB15. All right, hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Do me a favor and subscribe to the show. And if you're one of the people that tends to bail sometime in the middle of the second segment or whatever, stick around for the third segment today. Special guest Gabby. I think you guys are going to love this segment. We had a lot of fun talking about the Red Sox and the Pirates and potential deals that they could pull off. And it's worth your while. Even if you fast forward, I'll forgive you this one time. So I feel like we need to talk about grading trades or deciding who wins them. There's going to be a lot of trades this week and next, and it feels like it would be wise for me to kind of lay out some different ways to look at trades. So you have a lot of things to factor in when you start talking about trades. You have your need, you have availability, you have a time frame that you tend to be trying to fill, you have depth concerns, you have divisional concerns and competitive balance concerns. You don't want to trade to certain teams that you're going to be directly competing with for things, if you can at all help it. And I'd also say when you approach a trade, the best way to approach a trade is to kind of talk about what the other team needs, talk about what you have available, see if there's any kind of a partnership there. Far too often, I think we get hung up on like, well, the Pirates have Mitch Keller that they can trade. And we don't ever take it to that next level of this is what we would actually need to get back in order to make this trade make sense for us. And I say that because it's a big threshold to get over. You want to trade Mitch Keller, you have to come up with a threshold that gets you over what you think Mitch Keller would provide you. What you think Mitch Keller would provide you is roughly 200 innings per of every year that he's signed, barring injury, of course. And you figure you're going to get a solid number 3 or number 2 starter in a rotation. He can go deep into games. He can get you strikeouts when he has to have them. He can pitch to contact if that's a better way to go. He's got, I think, 9 pitches now they're talking about that he can throw. He's narrowed it down, I think, in most games to only 4 or 5, which is smart. But he's got a completely versatile arsenal. The Pirates worked their asses off to turn Mitch Keller into the pitcher he is today. So there's a lot of like actual blood, sweat, and tears put into Mitch Keller, not to mention the blood, sweat, and tears Mitch Keller put in to become Mitch Keller. Let's not forget that. It doesn't affect the trade, but this wasn't just a ready-made player. There was a lot of work done to make him who he is. And I use Mitch Keller as an example because he's, in my mind, the biggest chip they have to move. But that doesn't mean it has to be about him. Let's talk about some other trades. We brought it up a little bit in the first segment. Michael Kennedy, Josh Hartle, and Luis Ortiz for Spencer Horwitz. Well, I saw a lot of people after this whole thing about the gambling came out for Luis Ortiz were going, wow, the Pirates won the trade. Well, I don't know that I can go that far yet. And again, I really think, like, look a little bit beyond that, the headliners of this deal. Michael Kennedy is a crafty lefty that I personally thought was going to fly through this system. So I'm not going to change my mind now that he's with the Guardians, who are also historically good at bringing on pitching. And then Josh Hartle, they had just drafted. We barely got to know him at all. So I have no idea what that is. That's a lottery ticket if you're ever going to get one. So I don't know how this is going to work out for him. I don't even know how the Luis Ortiz situation is going to work out. But I can say I don't need to. Those 3 are what it took to get Spencer Horwitz. The Pirates needed a first baseman. They went out, they targeted one that had shown a little bit of power, had shown a lot of contact, and looked like a guy that they felt they could plug and play right into first base. And on top of all of that, the gravy and the cherry on top is that he can actually field the position really well. He's not perfect. He's slow. Probably doesn't have as much power as you'd like him to have. And he certainly came with a little bit of baggage with this injury history with the wrist. They made such a boneheaded mistake by telling you it was chronic, because that all that meant really is that this is something that has cropped up with him before, but it doesn't mean it's something he's dealing with every day or not able to like do anything. He had just been playing baseball. And the wrist injury that he got was actually an exacerbated version of that injury that probably didn't even get addressed in this surgery, really. He's going to be fine. He's going to get stronger. And I think you're going to ultimately really like Spencer Horwitz. But you don't get guys with the level of experience that Spencer Horwitz had, especially if it's been successful, without paying. You got to pay, and you got to pay hard. And the Pirates paid with pitching. That's what they have. They paid with pitching. They paid with Luis Ortiz, a guy who they did not feel was going to fit into their rotation this year. Granted, when they made the deal, they thought they had Jared Jones. Okay, so I think that changes the picture slightly. But I also think pitching has not been their problem this year. So did the Pirates get what they wanted out of this deal? Well, they got a first baseman. I'm pretty damn sure he's going to be back as the starting first baseman in 2026. And I think the story of Spencer Horwitz has yet to be written fully. But I don't need this to be a win or a loss. The Pirates got something they needed. The Guardians got something they needed. Doesn't matter to me that Luis Ortiz can't pitch anymore. Sorry, that has nothing to do with me. It just doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with whether this trade is a success or not. For the Pirates, the only thing that makes this a success or not is if Spencer Horwitz is good and continues to play here and continues to be a starter at the first base position, even if it has to be a platoon against left-handed pitching, which there is nowhere near as much of, so it's not really worth making a huge deal out of. If all that stuff falls into place, maybe one day you'll be able to look back and say, boy, that Spencer Horwitz trade, boy, they fleeced those Guardians. That's your favorite word, right? Everyone loves to go to fleeced. I don't think it just has to be that, though. I think this can be a good trade for both sides. It really can. Now, if Luis Ortiz gets a lifetime ban and Michael Kennedy has to have Tommy John and never makes it, but okay. Now, you got some other trades that I think the Pirates have tried. Clay Holmes is a good example, okay? They got Diego Castillo and Hoy Park for Clay Holmes from the Yankees. Now, at the time, I hated this trade. Now, here's why I hated this trade. At the time, I was one of the very few that really, really saw Clay Holmes and thought that he was a guy that was going to come along. The best way I can put this is, imagine I'm sitting here on my soapbox and I'm telling you, please be patient with Colin Horderman. Please. You don't know what you're asking to throw away yet. Look at his stuff. It's there. There's so much work to do, but Colin Horderman is an arm. Okay, now transpose that back to the day, and I'm talking about Clay Holmes because that's what I was doing. And the Yankees saw the same thing. Big stuff. Thought they could use it. Put it in the bullpen, and they handed the Pirates 2 problem children. Pirates were in a perfect position to take 2 problem children. Diego Castillo and Hoy Park were getting to the point where they were going to be dropped from the 40-man of the Yankees, and they couldn't do it anymore. So they moved them. And it didn't work out for the Pirates. Is it a bad trade? I mean, in hindsight, hell yeah, it's a bad trade. They got Clay Holmes. We got Diego Castillo and Hoy Park, and they're not even playing baseball anymore. So, yeah, bad trade in hindsight. At the time, did the Pirates get what they needed? Yeah. They needed to take a swing at something close to the league to help them out in the middle infield because they just didn't have it anywhere. And the Yankees, they took a swing on a reliever. This was a low leverage trade. How about one more here? Josh Bell for Eddie Yean and Will Crow. Josh Bell was coming off a terrible season, had a couple years of control left, in which people were actually a little bit afraid of how much he was going to make in arbitration because, again, very streaky player. We got traded a lottery ticket, Eddie Yean, who is in AAA right now as their closer. And while some of you are probably waiting to see him get caught up, and I think we might, I think there's still some problems there. I'm not 100% sold. And Will Crow is playing in somewhere in Southeast Asia. So, bad trade? Yeah, probably. But at the time, they needed to dump Josh Bell. They probably should have waited because they sold low, like we're just talking about with Brian Reynolds. They probably should have carried him into the next season and seen if maybe he could have had a little bit of a turnaround to make himself more valuable, because that wasn't a very valuable package they got. It would have been more valuable to let him stay here and hit some home runs and strike out the way he does than it would have been to do what they did. You don't have to win trades. You just have to execute them, and they have to fill the role you're trying to fill. If you try to dump salary, that's a different conversation. You lose that immediately because you're going to lose it. And if you're trading a real top talent, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. You're just going to lose a trade when you're trading somebody like that. When we come back from this next break, it's time for Gabby from Locked On Red Sox. Enjoy this one, and I'll be back to close this one up by myself. Check it out. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts and investments and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. There's a very specific category that affects me a lot, and it's takeout. I tend to order a lot of takeout, especially if my wife's closing, and sometimes lose track of how much you're actually spending when you add up all the tips and delivery fees and things like that. Just because you don't feel like cooking. Well, Monarch Money can snap me right back to reality pretty quickly, just showing me how much I'm spending. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, hello and welcome to a special segment here of Crossed Over Locked On MLB. We're doing Red Sox here and the Pirates. I'm Gary from Locked On Pirates. This is Gabby from Locked On Red Sox. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
All right. Hey, that worked. We're having technology issues tonight. So, anyways, we just want to get together and start talking about trades a little bit. These two teams are rumored. And maybe the gods don't like me talking about Quinn Priester because that seems to be when we cut out, right? Traded Nick York for him last year. We haven't gotten any results out of it. You haven't gotten any results because you moved on. Do you guys regret the move?
Yeah, I would say a little bit for sure. I think, I was surprised for sure with how quickly they decided to move on from him because of the fact that he's a young pitcher that the Red Sox could have developed within their system, and with where they're at right now with pitching. I definitely was a little bit surprised by that. I would say they were feeling confident in what they had in front of them in terms of their pitching and the young development with where they're at in the farm system, that my guess would be that they didn't feel like there was really an opportunity or a spot for him. So they said, we might as well move on from him and try to get something for him. But, definitely would have been somebody who I would have been curious to see what he could have done with us for sure.
So, I mean, I guess that's a good place to start, Gabby. What do you think the Red Sox really need? You guys are in a different spot than I am. You're in a place where you need to add on for a goal this year. My team just needs to add on and pretend we're trying next year. So
yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting season for the Red Sox. The beginning of the season did not start off how people wanted it to at all. There were high expectations going into the season because the Red Sox did make some good moves this offseason to improve the team. And then all of a sudden they were going in and they weren't winning games and people were in an uproar because they said, oh, where are the Red Sox? And we want a playoff team in Boston. And so they've been playing better as of late. And now they're at the point where they're in the playoff picture. So it's looking like they're going to be buyers at the trade deadline. Definitely priorities include starting pitching for sure. They definitely need to target the starting pitching market. Garrett Crochet's been great at the top of the rotation, but they do need to slot somebody else in who could be a trustworthy and reliable starting pitcher for the second half. The first base market is another interesting area of need for the Red Sox right now. They have a platoon going between Abraham Toro and Romy Gonzalez right now that has worked out, I would say, slightly better than people thought it was going to, but that's definitely an area that they're going to be looking into is can they find somebody who can be a good, solid, consistent first baseman to take them through to the postseason.
Feel pretty good in your bullpen, or is that just a prerequisite to being a playoff contender that you have to get a bullpen guy?
Yeah, the bullpen's always an area of need that I would say could use improvement. You have a really solid closer right now in Aroldis Chapman, who has been having, the season he's been having is a lot better than I think anybody anticipated there. But definitely can't hurt.
That's a little salt in the wound for us, everybody over here on Locked On Pirates side, right?
Oh, I know. I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, he's having one of his best seasons of his career right now. Not really sure where that came from, but I'm not complaining about it. Been super reliable out of the pen. But I would say middle relief is definitely an area that the Red Sox could still use help. So I'm sure they'll be looking at the relief market, but to my understanding, it's not something that they're prioritizing at the deadline.
Now, for starting pitching, do you think they're going for rentals, or do you think it's more guys with term? Are they looking for a long-term answer or a short-term answer?
Preferably, they'd prefer a longer-term answer, somebody who's under team control for at least another couple seasons that they can continue to utilize in their rotation beyond this season. That was something that the front office has been prioritizing for a while, is looking for guys who can really contribute for more than just this season. However, the types of pitchers that they may be targeting may not be the highest caliber starting pitchers because they know that there would be a pretty steep price to pay to get some of those types of guys. So I don't know that they'd be willing to get a solid, number 2 starter per se. It probably would be more of a mid-level starter that is controllable past this year, is the type of pitcher that the Red Sox would be targeting.
So it would sound to me like if we're going to try to let's make a deal here with the Pirates and Red Sox, the starting pitcher has to be an experienced starting pitcher. You're not looking for somebody that's close to the league. You're looking for somebody that's in the league, already contributing, has a track record you can trust, right?
Yes,
that's pretty much
going
Mitch
into
Keller.
The postseason, you want somebody who has that experience that you can slot in behind Garrett Crochet and say, yep, I would trust him in a postseason game.
That's pretty much Mitch Keller. That's all we have, right? And that's a lot of term. That's 4 years. That's a decent amount of payroll too. You guys will be willing to eat that payroll, I'm sure. And I think you'd realize we are going to ask for the sun, moon, and stars for that. So what is your sun, moon, and stars that's actually available?
Yeah, the outfielders are definitely up for grabs right now because the Red Sox do have a pretty deep outfield right now. And they're at the point now where not every single outfielder is playing every day because they just don't have the space for it. So there's always an outfielder that's sitting out. Roman Anthony, definitely not going to be moved. He's the best prospect in baseball. Right. They've made it clear that he is not somebody that they are even interested in entertaining the idea of moving. But Jarren Duran and Wilyer Abreu are both guys who have shown a ton of talent and ability with this Red Sox team, who both could be on the trading block. And the Red Sox have said that they would be willing to move one of their outfielders if it meant getting good starting pitching in return. So that's definitely where they would start, is one of their outfielders. And that's definitely not a bad place to start because those guys are talented. They're going to get you wins, both offensively and defensively. They've both been able to contribute. Jarren Duran is just a really versatile athlete with the speed. Right. To go along with everything else.
He's got a couple years of control left after his contract expires, right? So
he does, yeah.
And then I think what is it? Weiler has 3 or 4 more years of control.
Yeah, he has 3 more. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's another guy who you could kind of keep around, I would say.
Right.
And he's been amazing. I mean, won a Gold Glove last year, and his offense has been one of the most consistent bats in the Red Sox lineup this year. So he would be a very interesting trade piece because this is probably when his value, I would say, is at an all-time high. And he's somebody that I think, could really help a lineup like that. Although, with where the Pirates are at right now, is outfield an area of need that you would say for them?
Oh my God, yeah. For the entire time that we've had Ben Cherington here, we've needed at least one outfielder, maybe 2. We definitely need one. We need a middle of the order type guy.
Yep. And that's where Willier hits. Willier usually bats 5th or 6th. That's where he usually hits in the lineup, and it really helps boost that middle of the lineup. Duran's consistently been the Red Sox leadoff guy, but depending on where the team fits and positioning and all that, it made sense for the Red Sox to have him hit leadoff because he's fast, and if he gets on base, it just puts that immediate pressure on opposing pitchers. But that is definitely where I could see the Red Sox starting, because they would move one of those guys for pitching, because they literally don't need all those outfielders. They're all playing well, which is what makes it hard for them to come to this conclusion of saying we actively need to shop them. So they're not really necessarily actively doing that, but they are feeding calls on these guys. And I could see easily them working out a trade that involves one of those outfielders, and that could instantly boost your lineup for at least the next, few seasons, in Abreu's case, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be paying a heavy price too. I mean, our strength right now is the pitching prospects that are coming up and everything. So we feel like we might have the room to do this. Still, it's hard to trade somebody that is like a solidified number 3, and you've got them locked down for 3 or 4 years. Yep. We haven't done much to support Paul Skeens, but at least we've given him some pitchers to be with him, You
can give us him if you want.
Well, no, we definitely will not be doing that. That's more off limits than Roman Anthony.
I know.
But, okay, but you didn't mention Rafaela. Okay, now I like him better than Duran or Weiler Abreu. I'm going to suspect you do too, since you didn't mention him.
Defense in the outfield, and he plays in the infield as well. So that's also something that the Red Sox really like about him. He's played some second base. He actually played second base tonight. He's played shortstop, and he plays in the outfield. So the Red Sox really like that they can kind of move him around in that regard. And as a 9 hitter, he's taken a lot of strides offensively from last year to this year. And that's something that the Red Sox really find that they need in the bottom of the order, because over the last few seasons, it really truly felt like the 6 through 9 hitters were automatic outs. And now they're getting to the spot where they don't really have that. And because of the fact that he's taken this big leap offensively, he's somebody that the Red Sox, I don't really see making available in any trade conversations.
That makes total sense. 2 more guys I wanted to just mention here with you. Any chance that Password Garcia is going to be available? Let's say, let's say even it was like we wanted to just do a straight up prospect trade. Like we've got 3 AAA top notch starting prospects. What if one of those directly flipped for Garcia? Would that be something you might be open to?
Yes, it obviously would depend on who those prospects are and what positions they play.
Let's say Thomas Harrington, Hunter Barco, and Bubba Chandler. You'd have to consider 3 top starting pitcher prospects.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, because pitching is something that the Red Sox value, and they know that they need more of in their system. And that's something that they've been really emphasizing. I mean, the draft, the last couple seasons, they've really focused on pitching. Because they're trying to get young pitching in this system. And the Password is an intriguing player. I mean, the strides that he's taken from AA to AAA have been pretty tremendous. Huge power bat. And he's somebody who I know the Red Sox are open to moving because of the fact that they have a lot of outfield depth right now. He's somebody that I could see being packaged into a trade for sure. I'm not ruling that out. And I actually do think that could be a little bit more of a likely scenario than people might think it is, because they know that his value is really high right now. They definitely value him and what he could bring in the future, but there's not necessarily confidence in them being able to find a spot for him
right
away when he's ready to be called up. So they know they could get a lot of value for him. I definitely would consider moving him if it was for the right return.
All right. Well, Gabby, I can't thank you enough for joining me today to do this crossover. People will never believe the work that we put into it.
Oh, I know. Seriously, it's definitely been a journey for sure to get this done, but it's been fun, thinking of names and coming up with potential trade scenarios, because this trade deadline should be a fun one. And quite honestly, it has to be a big one for the Red Sox, because if they say they're buying, then they better be buying.
Right. And we've got to turn the ship around here. So, I think we learned some things. If we want anything to happen, we're going to have to part with Mitch Keller to get one of those major league level, outfielders. And Garcia being available was interesting to me, if only because I think there might be a deal there just on a minor league trade level. So that's a couple options there.
Yeah, I think he'd be hard, to part ways with, but the Red Sox are definitely open for the right return to move him. So it could be a really good fit for you guys with how well he's been doing in AAA.
Well, hey, that's all we got for you on this segment. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back to wrap up our own shows here shortly. So thanks a lot. Hey, thanks everybody for sticking around through segment 3. I hope you really enjoyed that crossover episode. Check out Gabby over at Locked On Sox, and check out all of our hosts, because there's a ton of little nuggets that they have about their needs that you can actually hear them tell you about before you start proposing trades. I think you'll understand the landscape a little bit better. We don't have very much time left before the deadline. I'll try to squeak in another 1 or 2 of these segments on the way there, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I enjoy making them. That's all I got for you today. Let's go Bucks.